Right, for more on that, Eskom and its leadership, we're now joined by Professor David Walwyn of the University of Pretoria. In his recent opinion piece, Walwyn says the new CEO will need to cleanse the power utility of the so-called energy mafia. Incumbent André will vacate the office of the CEO at Megawatt Park at the end of March. Professor Walwyn joins us now for more. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. What is the extent, Prof, of the infiltration of the mafia in the energy economy?
I wish I had a direct answer to that question. I don't think we know the extent of it. We do know that it is a serious problem because it has been referred to on many occasions. And we know, for instance, that Ruyter has asked questions such as, why has it taken the government so long to put the army into place in the power stations? We know that there have been death threats. We know that the managers of many of the power stations have to wear bulletproof vests to work. And we also know one very, very important telltale sign, which is that things are not getting better at Eskom. Despite the fact that there's been this planned maintenance program over 5 years, we are now at the lowest capacity utilization factor that we have ever been. And it's not for lack of trying. So there are things happening at these power stations which are inexplicable, other than to consider this issue of the way in which criminality has become pervasive in the institutions. When I refer to the institution, I'm talking about the power stations, particularly the maintenance programs at these power stations.
Yeah. When you talk about we have not seen much changes really to Eskom, I suppose it leads to the question that I would also want to get some clarity on, and maybe people might not even understand what the impact of this predatory behavior is on the performance of a utility like Eskom.
So the type of behavior that we are recording and seeing is what I call purposive or purposeful malfunction. So an item that is due for maintenance gets badly repaired or imperfectly repaired, and consequently it breaks down again. Now, the people who benefit from this are the maintenance teams that are brought in, and these are mainly contractors. So it's in their material interest to ensure that whatever they try and fix never gets fixed, because then they basically never earn any revenue.
Yeah.
So this is called in academia as rent seeking. These are agents who are rent seekers within the system who are extracting value without adding any value. And they are the problem really that Eskom has to deal with. So it's not just people it's not just theft, but it's this issue of purposive or purposeful malfunction that we have to deal with within the organization.
Yeah. And are they generally known to be violent? Is there a relationship to them employing street tactics in how, for example, they deal with those who are in authority who would seek and want to stand in their way?
I think the history and the record in this country is one of violence, and that's unfortunate. And I think it reflects the situation that this is a winner-takes-all economy. In other words, there's not a place in the sun for everyone, in the sense that everyone can establish some way of earning a living without it being at the expense of another person. So the winner-takes-all situation in the country means that it becomes very violent because it's a contest around available resources. And so it's not surprising to see a high level of violence. And we've seen this in the taxi industry, and we see it in many of these other sectors where there's high competition for a limited pool of resources, including in politics. I think that the big difference in Eskom is something like this targeted attempted assassination of the CEO. These are almost like a Russian mafia style tactics where in Russia there's so many reported incidents of the poisoning of people who are anti-Putin or the direct assassination. So it's a very disturbing trend if this is what we're going to see, where people will be targeted and poisoned because cyanide is cyanide is just the beginning of the kinds of poisons that can be used.
Yeah.
It's be detected, and it's not nearly as sophisticated as the kinds of things that are used in Russia.
Interesting that you use that word detection, because I wanted to ask you, in terms of us dealing with organized crimes that infiltrate Eskom in particular, how well have we done as far as detection and prosecution, which are I suppose, in some instances, known tools that would certainly deal with the infiltration by organized crime into any sector, really?
I think we've done very poorly, and I think we've done poorly because the political leadership in the country has almost declared open season for corruption and for criminality. They may not be directly involved in these crime circles, but there's been a failure to adequately prosecute and imprison the perpetrators of the crime. And so it's apparent to the criminals themselves that they can continue to get away with it. And in the process, they've become very powerful. And I think that's why I use the term mafia, is that this has got to the point where who controls the power stations? It's no longer Eskom. Eskom has lost control of these power stations to these criminal elements, in my perspective. And that's why we don't see any improvement in the capacity utilization factor of the coal-fired power stations.
So then, to that question, what operations, Prof, do we need to run if really the intention is to uncover and uproot organized crimes, infiltration at Eskom, maybe not even broadly speaking in the energy sector?
I think we need to start with change of our political leadership. And I particularly, I was listening to that earlier clip from the DA spokesperson about their lack of response to the attempted assassination of Ruyter. And I think there's maybe some good points there, but I do think that it's the issue here for Eskom and the issue about how one might respond to that is much more complex than the factions between the different members of the ANC. And I do think that Prof Gordon, for instance, has come out to say that South Africa is in a critical point and it's fighting this war against criminals within the state-owned entities. But we don't see the same kind of comment that comes from the Minister of Minerals and Energy. And I think he's part of the problem, and he needs to, in a cabinet reshuffle, be found another post. And I'll just give you a couple of simple examples from the minister himself about how he's dealt with these issues. So he referred very disparagingly to the CEO, Ruyter, as a policeman. He's not a CEO, he's a policeman. And actually, that's exactly what we need in Eskom at the moment. We need not just one policeman, but maybe 1,000 policemen to control the situation. So that was the one. And then, of course, he accused Eskom of treason. And then the other aspect is that the minister has consistently undermined the implementation of the IRP 2019. And that's a major problem for the organization, because it means that Eskom won't have the capacity, not just now, but also in the future, to supply the country's electricity needs. So to me, the strategy of the present Minister of Minerals and Energy is patently clear. He wants to ensure that we remain dependent on these coal-fired power stations. That's the first point. And the second point, he wants to be sure that these power stations don't function properly so that the maintenance budgets can be exceeded, and that this process of extracting rent from the ongoing maintenance of Eskom power stations can continue. Now, whether he's directly involved in that, I would have no idea. But I think that, like I say, the political leadership has created open season for this criminality, and we need a change of political leadership if we're going to move forward. So
31st of March, André Ruyter would probably be the last time in that office. Whoever comes in, you believe they would need to have, or wield at least, enough political influence to be able to do the things that you say need to be done?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the political power is essential here. And of course, at the ANC conference, they made this resolution that the Eskom would be transferred from state-owned entities to the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, which is, of course, I think a step in the right direction. I fully support that move. There needs to be a single entity who we can blame for the ongoing failure of Eskom. But I also think that the minister needs to be changed. We need a new minister in there who understands what the imperative is and is prepared to support and not undermine his CEO. You can't have a minister saying that the CEO is a policeman or using any opportunity that he can to have a sideswipe at the Ruyter and really fail to support his vision of transformation for the state-owned entity, which has been outlined on many occasions.
Professor David Walwyn, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That was the University of Pretoria's Technology Management Professor, David Walwyn.